What's up, my fellow scruffy looking nerdfers, and welcome to the Carbonite Chat. Today we're going to be talking about Darth Vader and how he finally, or Anakin, how he finally became a Sith. Now, he was obviously given a Sith name and sent on the mission by Emperor Palpatine, but in Palpatine's eyes, he failed that mission because he ended up almost dying when he fought Obi Wan Kenobi. And so, right after Revenge of the Sith, immediately after he's gotten a suit, kind of right after we see him yelling no and it cuts away, this is where he begins to be set on a new path to end up getting his Sith blade, and ultimately kind of prove himself to Emperor Palpatine. And he goes through a lot of struggles in this actually, and is actually fairly conflicted. And I enjoyed, this is following the comics 1 through 5 of the new Darth Vader series, and it was actually very interesting to see the ups and downs of this character going through such a traumatic experience and how he dealt with it, and maybe not exactly how you might expect he would deal with it. Again, it starts right after finding out that Padme is dead, and he kind of freaks out and he ends up using the Force in anger, and thrusts Emperor Palpatine back against the wall. And Emperor Palpatine says, you need to calm down. Padme ended up giving you a gift here. She gave you the gift of pain. Now, will you use that or will you die? And I take this as it's basically referencing the same way that Darth Maul ended up surviving after he was cut in half. He used the hatred and anger to be able to kind of heal himself through the dark side. And that's kind of what Palpatine's saying here. Are you going to use that to try to go after some revenge type thing? Or are you going to use that are you going to try to live? Or are you going to just kind of whine and cry about it? And Vader says that I'm going to live. And then Palpatine begins to start to electrocute him through the Force. And as this is happening, he's saying to Vader, grab your lightsaber. Why won't you defend yourself? You need to grab it and defend yourself. And he says, I lost my lightsaber. Obi Wan took it. And Emperor Palpatine says, no, that's not your lightsaber. That was a Jedi blade. Palpatine then puts the lightsaber up directly to Darth Vader's neck and says, I know you've been through a traumatic experience, but if you ever try to use the Force on me again, I will do what Obi Wan couldn't do, and I will finish you. And so then he begins to walk away, and he says, come with me. You've got things to do. I know you need to let go of this revenge that you have set inside of you, because there's much more important things we've got to do with the Empire. Then it cuts to, on Coruscant, Mas Amedda is kind of talking to the crowds and telling them about how the Jedi, that they turned against the Empire, or the Republic at this point, and Emperor Palpatine revealed their treasonous ways. And so these stormtroopers or clone troopers are putting all of these lightsabers into this kind of furnace. And as this is happening, Palpatine is discussing with Darth Vader as they overlook it. And he's explaining to him, he goes, do you know why that the Sith have red lightsabers? And Darth Vader says, no, they've hidden this from what was in the Jedi. And Emperor Palpatine's like, of course they did. Anything that they're afraid of, they end up hiding. And he begins to explain to him that they're all the same, but what a Sith does is he takes his pain, anger, and fear, and he forces it onto the crystal until the crystal is then bled, as he calls it. And the crystal then has to feel that pain and agony and anger, and becomes this beautiful Sith crimson red lightsaber. And so as this is going, Mas Amedda ends up lighting up the fire, and you see all of these lightsabers being completely burned up in front of the entire crowd. Emperor Palpatine then sends him on a mission. He says to be able to become a Sith, what you've got to do is you've got to go and defeat a Jedi in battle, and by defeating him, take his lightsaber, take the crystal, bleed it, and make it into your own crystal to build your own lightsaber. Now, of course, this is a problem because Order 66 just happened, and so he's got to go and try to search out and find a Jedi that's still alive to be able to go and kill them. So he goes up with Emperor Palpatine, and he takes him to this location where Palpatine says he set a ship that will give him all of the information that he needs to be able to find a Jedi and be able to get his crystal. When they get there, the ship is missing, and so he says, go on your way, solve it, use the Force, bend it to your will. Now that you're a Sith, You need to bend the Force to your will as opposed to, letting it flow through you as the Jedi did. So he goes and he finds that there's a group of slavers, which is probably the worst type of person you can be at the time, when Anakin is now trying to fuel himself through his hatred and anger to be found by Darth Vader as a slaver. And he finds them and he quickly just kind of tosses them away and destroys him. Vader then takes a ship and heads to a Jedi outpost. Now at the outpost there's a group of clone troopers, and the clone troopers are discussing how they're shutting down the Kamino base and there's no more clones going to be made, which is kind of closing up that loop so that when the original trilogy comes out, we know that they're not all clones. But they're discussing how that they're kind of going to be put away, and now here they are just kind of packing up Jedi robes and lightsabers that they know they're just going to burn. And what are they going to do now that there's no more wars? And there's a reference of like, we're supposed to battle, and the guy's like, what are we going to do? And one of them says, are you just hoping that we're going to die or something? And he says, at least something interesting needs to happen. Of course, about that time, Darth Vader flies in with his ship, and they try to give him a warning, and a few ships fly out to try to stop him. Vader quickly just goes right through them. He lands down on the Jedi outpost, and the clone troopers all show up. They obviously don't think that this is someone that's got the Force, because they think they killed all of the Jedi from Order 66. They don't really know the Sith, and it's just a guy in a black suit with no weapons. He doesn't have a gun, blaster, and so they try to fire off on him. He tries to use the Force somewhat to hold it off, and then he finally pulls a lightsaber to him and deflects a few, and then just cuts through quite a few of the clone troopers, and the rest end up fleeing off, not knowing what's going on because they think all of the Jedi are dead. And so he goes into the main control area where he gets his droid and asks the droid to search through all of the Jedi lists, which is why he went to the outpost, is to be able to find the list of all the names of who might be alive. And the only way to be able to figure out who might be alive is to find someone that took a Barash vow. Now this is a vow that, for whatever reason, depending on certain circumstances, they've taken a vow to no longer associate or do anything with, in no activities associated with the Order as a whole. And so because of this, Vader would know that they wouldn't be in action or doing anything, and thus killed him during Order 66, or even go and try to protect and save someone and end up being killed as well. They take a vow to do absolutely nothing with the Order itself, and this is a way that Vader can easily know who he can find. So the droid ends up finding someone, and it kind of cuts to this character. Master Karak Infila is meditating, and while he's meditating, he's trying to put together these 4 Padawan traps. As these Padawan traps are being put together, a droid comes in from the side and begins to attack him, and he's trying to fight him off, and the droid's kind of saying, why would you be trying to put these 4 traps together while trying to defend yourself against me? Why won't you drop them? And the master says that this is something that he's trying to do to test himself. He's got to make sure he's always at the highest level, and so he wants to be able to put some kind of test to make it actually hard. And the droid suggests that, I've been specifically trained to be someone that can keep up with and be a test for Jedis. Probably not the smartest thing. About this time is when Vader ends up showing up, and then they kind of stop doing what they're doing. And he says, I sense this was something that was going on. Set up everything and let me see who this creature is. And he goes down there and he calls out to Vader as he kind of sees him walking up the path. And he says, who are you? Did you kill all of the Jedis? And Vader says, yes, I did. And he goes, I knew I sensed something through the Force, and now I know exactly what it was. I couldn't do anything to help them because I took the Barash vow because of these transgressions that I'd done. But now that the Order has been destroyed, I can now do something, and I will defend them and kill you. I know this was the path that I was given, and this is why I was put in the situation that I was put in, so that I could defend the Order after the fact and kill you. He then says this location is called the Pass Val, and it's a kind of mountain that you have to go up, and each step there's a new challenge that the Jedi must take to be able to make it to the top, and each challenge is progressively harder and harder. And he says, so I'll be waiting for you up top. He then turns to the droid and tells him to open up the slice gate, and as this happens, Vader, down in the area that he's at, the waters begin to rush in and kind of just overtake him. And it's kind of a cool scene, almost kind of like a Moses from the Bible. He ends up using the Force and kind of opens the water to give him dry land to be able to get on. And through that, he ends up moving up further to the next challenge, which is these creatures called Raptorians. And they kind of look just like eagles. And they're beginning to try to attack Vader. And he quickly kind of chokes out a few, kills them. And upon seeing this, the Jedi then realize, this is a test. This is something that, I want to challenge myself on. And he tells the droid, stop the rest of the test. Let this man on up, which is interesting, I guess. Why not make it harder? I don't know. Maybe he's an old man that loves to fight and he's been stuck there not being able to fight. Seems stupid. But he says, come on up. There's going to be no more challenges. I want to take you on. And so as Vader's coming up, he grabs some rocks and throws them through the Force and ends up hitting the Jedi and throwing him off. About this time, the droid comes and attacks. And when the droid comes to attack him, Vader catches his arm and just kind of rips it off. Takes a kind of like Vibralance type thing that he's got and begins to fight and try to defend against the Jedi, who's obviously now up and attacking. While this is going on through the water and the Raptorians and all the other things that's happened, Vader's body's starting to deteriorate. And as he's fighting the Jedi, his leg begins to just completely just break off and he loses his balance and falls. And through this, the Jedi ends up throwing him and through force push just casts him off the top of the mountain all the way to the bottom. Now the Jedi thinks that, he's killed him. And in this, the Jedi begins to go and try to leave to gather up some more people, figure out what's happened. He says that Vader was too weak and too easy to kill. And so since he was too easy to kill, then he must have a master. So he needs to go find the master, kill that master, and then try to restart the Jedi Order. In this, it shows Vader down at the complete bottom of the mountain, along with the droid that he had ripped the arm off of and thrown away as well. Through the Force, he begins to disassemble the droid and kind of piece his body back together, mainly his leg. And as he does this, he ends up going off once it's accomplished, taking the weapon again, and heading off to go to try to face off with the Master one last time. The Master being completely shocked by what's going on, and now in the main city area where all of the people are, kind of rushes up to meet Vader, and they're on top of this dam, and they begin to fight. And Vader, again, he's kind of still weak from all of the struggle that's been going on, but he's holding himself off, and the Master's kind of talking how he's going to defeat him again. And then these patrolmen come up and try to say, y'all aren't allowed to be on here. This is a structure that y'all can't be at. And Vader quickly just kind of force tosses them off of the dam. And in this, the Jedi then goes and tries to stop them and catches them in the air and slowly, easily lowers them to a certain spot. Vader sees this and sees he has the advantage and kind of thinks about what Emperor Palpatine had told him about, using all the dark side things that you have, something that a Jedi would not think to do. And so Vader, seeing this, begins to try to destroy through the Force different buildings and stuff and begins to try to flood the city. The Jedi, seeing this, begins to freak out, tries to stop it. He's unable to stop it. And so as the buildings are kind of collapsing, he's trying to hold back the water to protect the people. And he's, begging like, don't do this. Don't hurt these people. You came here for me. These people don't deserve to be hurt. They have nothing to do with this. Vader's like, they've got absolutely everything to do with this. You just don't understand. And so Vader ends up pulling the Jedi's lightsaber to him and then force chokes him and lifts him up off of the edge of the dam. And he ends up just finally releasing the water, flooding the entire city, choking out the Jedi, dropping him down. and going to leave. When he goes to leave, he gets a message from the Emperor and says, now that you're on the ship, you have one more thing that I need you to do. I've already told the droid, you're flying to a location. You need to go there. It ends up being Mustafar. You need to go there, find a dark side area. There's a very dark presence in that planet, and you need to find the thing calling to you. Go to that and take it and use that dark side to kind of build with your anger, your hatred, your pain, to then bleed the crystal that you're going to need to do something along those lines to be able to bleed this crystal. And so he shows up, he ends up walking off into this cave, and he begins to disassemble the lightsaber and take out the crystal. When he takes out the crystal, he begins to try to manipulate the crystal. Upon trying to manipulate the crystal, it just casts him back and throws him back against the wall. And he begins to think, like, what am I doing? Why, all the stuff I just did. I'm back on Mustafar after everything that just happened, fighting my master. This is where he basically killed Padme. And then it shows him, and he begins to put back together the lightsaber, which he has not bled yet. And he shows up at Coruscant, and Emperor Palpatine goes, so you accomplished the task that I set you out for. And he says, yes. He goes, so you got a lightsaber? And he says, yes. And he goes, well, let me see it. And he turns it on, and it's still green. And Emperor Palpatine says, so you chose the weakness? And Vader says, yes. They begin to fight. Vader quickly kind of tosses him aside. Palpatine said, you chose the weakness. That's, very disappointing. Vader throws him down, and it shows Emperor Palpatine severely injured. And he says, yeah, it was very disappointing. What a waste. And he walks off. The next scene, it shows him going to meet Obi Wan Kenobi. I was obviously very shocked by all of this that's going on. And it shows him and Obi Wan Kenobi. And he walks up, and Obi Wan Kenobi quickly turns around and turns his blade to him. And Anakin ends up saying, kneeling down. And as he kneels down, Obi-Wan begins to come to strike down, and Anakin says, please. And in the middle of it, he cuts off his lightsaber and goes, Anakin. And then right from that point, it cuts back to the cave on Mustafar. And it's almost like a reverse dark side cave with Luke from Dagobah, which is really interesting. Where instead of being challenged with the dark side, he was challenged with the light side, which is really actually very interesting. I actually quite enjoy that. I may change the title of this video now that I kind of thought of that it's Vader's light side cave testing versus Luke's dark side cave. Very interesting parallels there. I like this comic. It was a very well done comic. But anyways, you find out that this was just him considering a choice that he could have made. And he says, no, I can't go that way. This must be the way. And so he leans down and begins to just power and kind of put all of his frustration, anger, and hatred into this crystal. And you see kind of with the way the comic's done, some of the things that's running through his mind. And you've got him carrying his mom and an Attack of the Clones after she had died. And then you've got him seeing Padme. You've got him with Obi Wan Kenobi. You've got him with Emperor Palpatine. And through all of that, he ends up finally bleeding the crystal. And he ends up showing back up. And Emperor Palpatine's like, did you accomplish a task? And it's a repeat of what you saw before. But he says, yes, master. And turns on the lightsaber to reveal that he's got a red lightsaber finally. And that's how, through his own dark side cave journey and going and trying to find this master Jedi that really almost defeated him, but it was for using Sith tactics that he wouldn't have really ever used prior to that, killing just random civilians. And that's why when the Master Jedi was like, they have nothing to do with this, and he was like, yes, they have everything to do with it, because he's learning the Sith ways in which take everything you got. If you want to kill some of these people because it's going to make the Jedi weaker and give you a chance to defeat them, well, that's what you do, because that's what a Sith does. They use the weakness that the Jedi have. It kind of harks back to the Clone Wars episode Citadels, where Anakin's going with Tarkin. They're going to rescue him from the Citadel, which is a prison. And while they're trying to go, Tarkin's kind of talking down about the Jedi. And at this point, Anakin's, a little up. He likes the Jedi at this point. He's probably the most for the Jedi at this point than he's really been at any other point in all of Star Wars. It's shortly after this that he starts to kind of view the Jedi in a different light. And it's through Tarkin talking about him that he's found that the Jedi don't really have enough in them to accomplish the task to win a war. And this kind of fits with Anakin. He's kind of always seen it as like, maybe we need one strong, powerful person to take over and do all these things. And even if they're a little bit bad, and if it ends up bringing peace to the galaxy, then that's ultimately the best case scenario. And so from that, we see now him here, which is kind of interesting because when he shows up to meet Palpatine again to show that he's got the blade, Mas Amedda and Tarkin are in there talking to him. And of course, if you read the Tarkin novels and stuff like that, him and Tarkin have a very close relationship. Tarkin's one of the few people that ends up kind of knowing that Vader is Anakin. And even in the Tarkin novels, he brings up kind of remembering the Citadel and realizing that Anakin kind of had something different to him. And this is one of those times where he's able to implement that now that he's on the Sith side. But ultimately, I thought this comic was really, really good. I'm wanting to go through it because this comic's still kind of running. And I want to start kind of discussing some of the comics and some of the different stories that some people haven't looked at, some of the people that don't have the time to go through everything. And so I wanted to do that for them. And some of the people that really enjoy some of the comics and all of the extra materials, we could discuss some of the deeper meanings, such as some of the things I brought up, like that being a dark side or a light side cave for Vader, and then the connection with the Citadel and Vader kind of realizing that a Sith can do extra things and take advantage of weaknesses that other people have, because a Sith they don't really have any moral stance or base. And even though Anakin struggles with that, as we see, he's still struggling with it with Lords of the Sith, that he's starting to see the benefits when he needs them to take advantage of that. And it's something he has to continue to learn. And by the time we get to A New Hope, he's kind of fully learned. And by the time we get to A Return of the Jedi, he's starting to turn back around again. But for those of you that have already read it and gone through this, I love the comments, and I look forward to hearing if there's any little interesting pieces or connections that maybe I've missed and can learn from and grow from as we're going forward, because the best part of all of this is just kind of having the awesome conversations down below. It's one of my favorite parts of doing this channel, so I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts. I hope I brought a little more interesting information or nuggets that maybe you might not have picked up with all of those things if you have read them, so I didn't completely waste your time as a whole. I will see down below. I'll post videos right here as well. Link to my TeePublic page down below. Thank you as always for watching, and never forget, you Nerf herders, I love you.